Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to do something really fun. We're going to completely strip away all that pop culture fiction to uncover the terrifying historical, biological, and physical truths behind the ocean's absolutely most notorious monster. We're talking about the Kraken, a creature so incredibly massive, sailors literally thought it was an island, capable of dragging entire ships down into the icy, lightless abyss. But where exactly does the myth end and the reality begin? Well, let's find out.
I mean, thanks to shiny Hollywood blockbusters like Clash of the Titans, we kind of immediately have to address this question, just to separate historical fact from cinematic fiction. I'm sure you vividly remember a giant, toga-clad Zeus yelling, "Release the Kraken!" Right? It sounds epic. It's an iconic moment, but it is completely, 100% historically inaccurate. The ancient Greeks were brilliant sailors, and sure, they had their fair share of sea monsters, but the Kraken was definitely not one of them.
When you compare the two side by side, the historical mix-up becomes pretty obvious. The Greeks actually had a completely different monster named Cetus. It was this giant fish-whale hybrid thing defeated by the demagogue Perseus. Hollywood basically just swapped the name Cetus out for Kraken because, let's be honest, it's a way more intimidating name that generates instant hype. But the historical reality? The Kraken is a purely Scandinavian nightmare. It was born from a very real, very rational fear held by Nordic sailors who were out there navigating the freezing, uncharted, and ridiculously dangerous northern seas.
Section 1. Tracing the True Origins.
Okay, the evolution of this beast is absolutely wild. It morphed from a genuine 12th century nautical warning into a staple of 19th century classic literature. The very first written account wasn't some campfire fairy tale, it was an official warning back in 1180 by King Sverre of Norway, telling his sailors to beware of a giant, squid-like monster off the coasts of Norway, Iceland, and Greenland. Then, by 1250, an ancient text called The King's Mirror describes it as the Hafgufa, a beast so huge it looked more like land than an animal, capable of swallowing whole ships and whipping up whirlpools just by turning over. But it wasn't until 1752 that the author Eric Pontoppidan officially cemented the name Kraken into natural history. And from there, the legend just exploded. Alfred Tennyson penned this super eerie sonnet in 1830 about the beast sleeping in the abyssal deep. And of course, Jules Verne pitted the crew of the Nautilus against giant squids in his 1870 masterpiece, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
And you have to understand, authors in the 19th century were absolutely terrified of this concept. Nobody more so than the legendary French writer Victor Hugo. The man had a visceral hatred for tentacles. In his 1866 novel, The Toilers of the Sea, Hugo went on this massive tangent outside of the main plot entirely just to rant about how awful cephalopods are. He described them as glutinous masses endowed with a malignant will. He actually said that while a wild beast's claws enter your flesh, with a tentacled beast, you enter into the creature. Big yikes, right? But here's the fascinating part. These writers weren't just making things up out of thin air.
Section 2. The Biological Truth.
The myths were actually inspired by rare, deeply terrifying glimpses of two very real apex predators of the deep, the giant squid and the colossal squid. Just listen to these stats. The giant squid reaches a massive 43 feet in length, and its tentacles are lined with hundreds of sharp teeth. But incredibly, the colossal squid is somehow even more intimidating. It grows up to 49 feet long, weighs over 1,000 pounds, and holds the title of the world's largest living invertebrate. And get this, instead of just suckers or teeth, the colossal squid's tentacles are armed with rotating, barbed hooks. It is a genuine, living, biological nightmare. But since they live in the freezing, pitch-black depths of the ocean, how did medieval sailors ever even know about them?
Well, it breaks down into a three-step process that explains exactly how 14th century sailors ended up finding massive, disembodied tentacles just floating in the middle of the ocean. Step 1. Deep down in the dark, sperm whales engage in these epic, unseen battles, hunting giant squids for food. We know this for a fact because whales are routinely found covered in massive sucker mark scars. Step 2. Herman Melville actually writes about this in Moby Dick. When sperm whales are under extreme duress or if they're being hunted themselves, they often disgorge or basically throw up their stomach contents, which leads to step 3. Those half-digested giant squids or huge chunks of thick, hook-lined tentacles float right up to the surface. I mean, imagine being a 14th century sailor peering over the edge of your little wooden boat and seeing a 20-foot tentacle casually drifting past. You'd absolutely assume the monster attached to it must be the size of an island.
But here's where it gets humbling. Our modern scientific understanding of these beasts is shockingly limited. To put our lack of knowledge into perspective, throughout all of recorded history, humanity has only ever managed to measure and study about 600 giant squids. Think about that. That is an unbelievably small sample size for an entire global species. We are basically drawing all our conclusions based on a handful of specimens that either happened to wash ashore or were accidentally pulled up in fishing nets.
And the reason we only captured live video of a giant squid in its natural habitat for the very first time in 2012 is actually super simple. The vast majority of our own planet remains completely cloaked in darkness. We've only explored about 5% of the world's oceans. That means 95% of it is entirely uncharted. We honestly know less about the deep sea than we do about the surface of the moon or our solar system. The ocean is vast, it's deep, it's dark, and it is utterly unpredictable.
Which brings us to Section 3. What if it were real?
So if an apex predator this massive actually existed today, it would likely retreat to a place called Point Nemo. This is the oceanic pole of inaccessibility. Basically, it's the most remote oceanic location on planet Earth, deep in the South Pacific. It's so isolated that it's literally used as a dumping ground for dead space satellites. Internet lore and YouTube channels love to speculate that if a mystical Kraken were hiding out somewhere, it'd be here, where it might even clash with H.P. Lovecraft's legendary slumbering monster, Cthulhu. It's a ridiculously fun thought experiment, but let's apply some actual, real-world physics to this monster for a second.
If a mythical Kraken wanted to pull a ship down to Davy Jones's locker, it's going to take a staggering amount of muscle. If we apply Archimedes' principle of buoyancy to the myth, a Kraken would need to generate over 400,000 kilograms of force just to drag a standard-sized ship beneath the waves. Why? Because the buoyant force of a submerged object equals the weight of the fluid it displaces. Think about trying to push a fully inflated beach ball underwater. It fights back, right? Now scale that up to a massive wooden or steel vessel. To counteract that immense buoyancy and pull a whole ship into the deep, the sheer physical strength required by this cephalopod would be mathematically off the charts.
And the domino effect on our world would be just as staggering. In the ocean itself, a predator of this size would force other marine life, like sharks and whales, to rapidly evolve to become faster and stealthier just to survive. But for humanity, history as we know it would be completely unrecognizable. Those brave oceanic voyages of the Vikings, completely blocked. Christopher Columbus trying to cross the Atlantic, he'd likely end up as Kraken food, meaning the Americas might not have been discovered by sea at all. We might have had to wait for airplanes. Global maritime trade, which is literally the backbone of our modern economy, would be utterly disrupted. Fishermen would be terrified to ever leave port. But then again, human curiosity is a funny thing. The existence of a real Kraken would almost certainly spawn a multi-billion-dollar industry of extreme, high-risk deep-sea adventure tourism. You just know there'd be thrill-seekers out there desperate to catch a glimpse of a real-life Leviathan.
Ultimately, the Kraken represents humanity's oldest phobia, the terror of the absolute unknown. We look out over the water and slowly realize we are standing on the edge of an alien world, right here on our own planet. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one deeply unsettling thought about exactly what other ancient legends might be waiting for us in the dark. If 95% of the ocean is still a complete, uncharted mystery to us, what else is down there, just beyond the reach of our submarine lights, waiting to be discovered? Thank you so much for exploring this legend with me, and I'll catch you next time.